Kids learn about money from their parents. They know whether you tend to save up for fun purchases or pull out the credit card when temptation strikes. Since they're learning from you, talk to your kids about using their money wisely. Start by admitting your own mistakes, talking about your family budget, and discussing the importance of sharing some of your money with causes that are important to you. There are gentle ways to help them become wise stewards of their own money. To learn more, go to stcumoney.org.
Spokane listens when business talks. Welcome to Business Talks, the region's only local business talk show with your host, Ryan McNeese. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well Dressed Walrus. Now, let's get down to business with Business Talks.
Welcome to Business Talks. I'm Ryan McNeese, and we are very fortunate here in the studio today. We have Wayne Williams, President and CEO of Telect, Inc. How are you doing, Wayne?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And just from a historical basis, Telect was originated in 1982, I believe, and you've been the acting president and CEO 1994 and 1997, respectively.
Right.
Give us a little bit of background on the business. A lot of people know about Telect because of the media and big business here in the Spokane region. But tell us a little bit more about it historically.
Yeah, thank you for asking. We've been kind of dark the last 15, 16 years, I think, with the exception of a few shifts and changes. So I think, starting in 1982, I was the first employee with my parents and didn't know if I even wanted to work there. And I kind of dug in, met my wife, my now wife of 33 years, shortly after that. And just really found out that I needed to grow where I was planted. And that led me to just into my creativity, just developing different products and that. And, I would say that probably anything that we were touching at that time for the first 17 years there was turning to gold.
It was really working, clicking.
It did, yeah. And we saw manufacturing. We were probably one of the second or third largest manufacturer in Spokane until we were pre-IPO of 2000, and then the market just evaporated. And so I've learned more the last 17 years. It's 13,
Isn't that an interesting point,
it is.
though? We oftentimes learn the most during the tumultuous times, et
Oh,
cetera.
yeah. I heard my son said one time, why does everybody aspire to get to Mount Everest, where there's no oxygen in the valleys, we're always is where all the growth happens.
That's true.
And so that's probably been the most challenging. We've seen our product portfolio in about 12 years turn over almost 100%. So in the midst of telecom changing and all of that, and with Ethernet taking over the outside markets, we have had to just continue to reinvent ourselves. And it's been a tremendous opportunity, and I've been excited. I don't know that I would have wished anything for anybody else the last 16 years of going through it. I think that's where I got all my gray hair now.
Well, like I said, the challenges are where I think we learn. You inspect the marketplace, you try to understand which products are going to work in which markets, and ultimately what could be profitable. Give us your background in terms of, from a technology standpoint, because we know you've had some success in the patent world. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think my background of innovating and creating, I think, just came from in the fourth or fifth generation of entrepreneurs with the Williams family, and so I was selling praying mantises at 5 years old, and raised a cow, and then had a fly shop, and I love to tie flies and sell them commercially before I joined Telect when I was 18, and that kind of continued on. I would look at things and what wasn't what we were the customer was asking for, but it was trying to figure out what we could really provide to them to increase value. And so we had fiber optic back in the early day. We had DSX, cable, and power panels. Today, our market has completely switched. We're heavy in fiber and heavy in power, and we also do racking and solutions. So when I shared that before on the technology side, our sweet spot in the marketplace as a business, the DNA is still there with my son, who's runs our sales, marketing, and product strategy, and the entire team at Telect, because they're always trying to innovate, come up with new ideas.
Right. Well, and that I think is the real challenge in the technology world is it's like dog years. I mean, a month or a year with a particular product or technology, and you could have gone left and the rest of the industry goes right. But it sounds like through innovation and creativity, Telect and yourself and your team has really identified the ability to stay current.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
not easy to do.
It is not easy. In fact, I will tell you the biggest shift in communications really came March of 2014, and most people didn't pay attention to it as much. But when AT&T announced that they were going to buy DirecTV for $50 billion, no one really knew it. We were a large supplier to AT&T at the time, and our waters got really bumpy quickly because in capital equipment they would spend $22 billion a year in capital equipment. Well, at that time they had cash, but they also had to go out and borrow, and we watched that market just change. And I remember the seas were really bumpy. We had the facility in Plano, Texas. I got the team together and said we're going to close it down and bring it back to Spokane. And everybody's like,
kidding.
"Whoa!"
Because currently, do you now have that again or no?
No,
okay,
we don't.
So you had Texas and
we only
Mexico.
have Spokane and Mexico. We closed down Texas. We closed that down in 120 days. Brought it back to Spokane. Revenues dropped in 14-15 with that. We said no to customers. We raised prices. I would credit a couple people on the team, and my son Spencer really, as a economics major, just really focused on the business side, saying no to customers and raising prices.
But that's tough to do, and I appreciate you making that comment because it is actually one of the single hardest things to do, that you're in the business of doing business, bringing customers, marketing, et cetera, and then all of a sudden here's some customers and you're saying, I don't know if this is the right business for us right now, for our infrastructure or the timing in the market. That's a tough thing to do.
It is tough. And actually in the middle, it's like telling your team, hey, the seas are rough right now, but over here there's this hurricane, and I'm going to take you into that and let's go do it. And then right in the middle of the hurricane, even me, without having to let anybody see it on my face, I'm going, was this the right decision?
Yeah, I just led my whole team into this hurricane.
Yeah, I took them in there. And so you're doing it. But in 2016, it was a remarkable turnaround. We set our goal on the turnaround, and we saw 25% growth, and we saw double-digit EBITDA in our business, and we are basically completely debt-free in the business, and it just turned the thing around. But you have to do really, really hard things quickly, and you can't manage your thoughts through what other people on the outside
with their expectations, because you're the one truly in the middle of the hurricane, if you will. Have you spend any time looking back to think, what if you had kept the Texas operation open? What would it look like then?
Well, yeah, our Cameron Headley, our VP of Finance, I think he said it really well in one of our planning meetings. We're doing a lot of really 5-year business planning right now because we have changed some of the technology direction. And he said, if you'd waited 2 more months, we'd be out of business. It's just the 2 months, and you don't realize it at the time, even when you're going through the hurricane.
That you were that close.
We were that close. When you look back at it now, there you're going, we have a little bit more time, but we need to make this decision because it's highly strategic.
Do you remember, in terms of that strategic decision, do you remember a time or a place that you just knew, gut feeling-wise, we got to close that down? I mean, meetings that you'd potentially had, information, data that you'd potentially assessed and thought, this is absolutely what we need to do.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like any decision that a leader has, even if it's a poor performing employee, you never say, I should have waited longer. No. You always say, I should have done this earlier.
Yeah, we had signs earlier.
Yeah, the indication for me was in June of that year. We saw it changing, but then I had to manage the behaviors inside the company too at the same time, and you have to figure out when you can announce it. Mm-hmm. And then we didn't start it until November 2nd.
Okay.
And so it took us, if I could have had some of that time back, always you could have, but sometimes people just wait too late. So
oh yeah, you see it all the time. Read the Wall Street Journal. That's what you read about, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. But you obviously made the right call at the right time, which is to be commended. Doesn't make it easy, right? You had to get your team to go along with you.
Yeah, and you even have to admit that, you're as a leader, you have to admit that, we failed. We could have done this a little earlier. You have to go back and go, those signs, some of the signs that we saw that just because of this major customer doing it back in 2010 when I wanted to do it then and didn't have the chutzpah to kind of push through back then. But you just have to grieve those quickly. You have to say, I'm done with it, and then you just move on. You can't live in regret of yesterday.
The classic hindsight's 20/20.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's true for all of us. You look back and think, well, now that didn't make sense, but it sure makes sense when you're looking backwards. Of all the challenges, successes, et cetera, which pieces of the operation of the business do you think you enjoy the most? What really fascinates you, satisfies you?
Yeah, I love to. There's a couple things. I'm really a gap identifier. I can sit down very, very quickly across an entire business and understand where the weaknesses
Something's
are.
missing.
And I like to create, but I don't like to do it by myself. I like to do it with a team.
Right.
That's what I like about watching. March Madness is fun for me. Is I'm not like getting upset with Shimmick Karnowski for not making baskets down below.
Right.
And everybody else is looking at, well, why does he do it? Well, part of it is because the rest of the team isn't shooting baskets outside to pull to take the defense off.
Collaboration.
So it's
true
all
collaboration.
it is. It's really collaborative. And I enjoy the innovation. I enjoy the coaching. I enjoy that stuff. I'm in my area of calling right now, which is interesting. I'm called to be CEO. I'm called to oversee that. But I would say that sometimes we're called in areas where it's not in our passion. And I'm not the most passionate about my calling on where it's at.
That's an interesting concept, because not everybody would say that. They would say kind of the classic, I've been called to this, and they're passionate about it, and they go right down that channel.
Right.
But I think that's very honest of you to say, this is my role right now, but not necessarily what you're most passionate about.
Oh, yeah. If I like to create products or solutions or new businesses or that kind of stuff, I'm not doing that today. But what I'm doing is inside the business, I'm creating other aspects of it. So I have to get my joy filled a little bit differently.
That then allows you to do that passion either concurrently or at a later date.
Exactly.
And you mentioned, I think, passions and calling. You do a lot of coaching outside of Telect in terms of whether it be speaking at Whitworth University or other organizations. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think my biggest growth really is I'm in my fourth year right now with the Townsend Leadership Program. John Townsend, he and Henry Cloud wrote the book Boundaries 25 years ago. It's been a New York Times bestseller since it came out. And I go down to California once a month for coaching, and then he ends up he's done work with me too. And I do mentoring more than anything.
Okay.
The coaching, the speaking has been great. I've spoke at their Leadership Institute to counselors and leaders, and I really enjoy that. If it's Whitworth, if it's Gonzaga, if it's Men's Business Forum over in Coeur d'Alene, I love to.
You're ready. You show
inspire.
up.
I love to just figure out a way to facilitate growth with people.
Let's take a short break and
You
come
bet.
right back, because I'd actually like to explore that a little more. Thank you, Wayne.
You bet.
In touch, online all the time. SpokaneTalksOnline.com.
What is a credit union? It's a cooperative, like a food co-op or a housing co-op, but the members share money. Credit unions offer the same services you'll find in a bank, but they're different from banks. First, credit unions are owned by their members, and credit unions are not for profit. Any money the credit union makes goes right back to the members in the form of low fees and good rates. To learn more, you can go to STCU's blog at stcumoney.org. Hi, this is Kent Adams, co-host of Business Talks. I'd like to introduce you to a couple of friends, Lisa and Alan Gwaltney of Window World. I've known Lisa and Alan for a number of years and know them to be honest and caring folks. They take pride in their windows, sliding doors, and blinds. So when it comes to your home, call them direct at 509-456-5880. That's Window World of Spokane and Coeur d'Alene. And if you tell them Kent sent me, they'll give you 5% off a 5-window installation. Call them today at 456-5880.
Home. That word means so much more than its 4 letters suggest. R, that letter, stands alone. When you see someone wearing a blue block R, you're talking with a realtor. Your local neighborhood realtor can help you find your first home, your next home, or help you sell the one you have. Next time you think home, think realtor. The brand makes the difference. This message brought to you by the members of the Spokane Association of Realtors.
Welcome back. This is Business Talks, and I'm here with Wayne Williams at Telect. But right before the break, we were specifically talking about really coaching, but more mentoring and the opportunities that you've had due to the successes and challenges that you've had over the years to reach out to folks not only in our community but throughout the country to get opportunities to, I'll use the words, give back and really discuss ways that others can move their organizations forward. Let's talk some more about that and maybe what you see as some of the most relevant questions that are coming to you from these organizations.
Yeah, and I actually, your last question, just right on. I think it's not so much for the organizations. I've got this philosophy for working with millennials. A lot of people, have this difference.
Absolutely.
They're always being critical about it. I think they're fascinatingly ambitious and desire, the ones that really want to work, right? And what they lack today is mentors. I mean, we've got probably a 20-year history right now of young men and women growing up with parents that have either been helicoptered over the top of them. They aren't letting them risk. They didn't let them risk. So now they enter into the workplace and they don't know how to risk and they want to risk. And so they don't have maybe the best relationships with their folks as well. So I'm finding that what's been fun, and I kind of consider myself, when I was 25, 26, I'd be millennial-like then. So I'm going, well, so many times when you get to my generation or my parents, everybody wants to hold on to what they have. And so I'm a believer you want to give it up as fast as you can, let go of the control. And so my tagline really is, I want them to burn their fingers, I just don't want them to torch the house.
I think that's a great analogy.
Because they need to get calluses.
Yeah.
My grandfather was a neon sign maker and a glass blower, and I remember even at a young age when I watched him blow a piece of glass or make neon, and he had gloves on, but then within 5 seconds he'd reach across and grab a piece of glass. It was still hot. But when you shook his hands, I still remember the callus of his hands. And that's kind of like what it is in business. So for me, coaching, now when I coach and I talk with people one-on-one that are coming to start a business or they're running through a tough time or they have to lay off a team or they've got to let somebody go or their business, I'm just really sharing with them all the scars on my back.
Yep.
It's the scars into stars thing. If I can let them burn their fingers a little bit through me and let them know that it's okay, I'm kind of in that well with them and I'll be there with them. That to me is just one of the best times I have.
Well, and there's so much that's been written on the concept of essentially not recreating the wheel, that if these folks that you're mentoring have the ability to get from A to B faster without having to make some of the mistakes you did, have skin in the game, as you said, be close to the flame, if you will, but maybe go left and not right and skip some of the challenges that you didn't need to endure. I think you're right on. And I really like your point about millennials because we read about it. I don't think you can open the Wall Street Journal or any popular culture magazine of the day and not have millennials be in a critical light. And I absolutely agree with you that although they might approach not only the business world or the culture or challenges or what have you from a different angle, we need to look at that angle, and it might be better in many ways, and there might be items from the prior generation that we need to hold on to that.
Right.
But we really do need to look at what these millennials are coming up with. They're really impressive. We had a couple teenagers on the show a couple weeks ago that did a DECA project for a ride-sharing app, and I sat there just awestruck at these kids are 17, 18 years old. And I think it just goes to your point that we really need to take a hard look at what these millennials are bringing to the table and not overgeneralize just as an entire generation.
Exactly. And I think part of it is that we don't we think that they have to catch up to where we're at.
Right.
And in reality, we have to catch up to where they're at. My got 3 grandkids, and one of them, the oldest is 2. And so it's amazing because he comes into the house and he says, Lexa, for Alexa. He's trying to say, he watches it. So we can look at that and go, oh, that's a shame. He's at 2 years old. He shouldn't be doing that. He needs to do this and this. Yeah, that's true. But really, by the time he's graduating from high school, speech to text, voice to text, AI is all real. And it will be there. And so we're looking at that going, well, why aren't they learning some of this other stuff? It's like,
it's
well,
not
what
their
are
reality.
we doing to keep up with that we can still communicate with them at 18.
Absolutely. I appreciate that perspective because sometimes you don't get an opportunity to talk to folks that have that perspective. And for myself, I was born in 1974, so for me, really, computer interaction with technology was Commodore 64, the first Apples. And I look at my own kids, and I've taken the approach that my son is heavily involved at 10 in programming and animation, and He has a better computer than I currently have at the office.
Yes.
The reason I believe strongly in that is this is what he knows. I knew the Commodore 64. They're coming into the game, so to speak, with amazing technology, or as you said, AI. It's real. That's their present time, and they need to build from that.
I applaud you on that with your son, because my daughter's 24 and married and has a child, and I remember when she was 9 and I had one of the first Apple iBooks that were out, and it was because to me people were buying DVD players, but for a couple $100 more you get a laptop. And I remember in Disneyland we were driving down there in the minivan, and she's 9 years old, she's in the back seat, and she goes, "Daddy, I can't get on the internet." And I go, "Well, I know, honey." Now I'm in telecommunications, right? And so she goes, "I know, honey, you can't because we're not at home." And all I remember her saying was, "That's not right."
Oh my god!
So at 9 years old, saying that's not right. So, and I go, "You're right, honey. It's not, but it will be someday." And so now we just fast forward 15 years,
and she
was right. You can be on anywhere, and right now we're only thinking cellular and Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is going to take over in this market. But we're probably only 10 years away from ubiquitous satellite. I mean, there will be that kind of. They're talking right now about low orbit satellites or balloons that are running off of solar and other stuff that will just be hanging there to give us access in places we never thought of.
Which brings up some interesting points about outlying areas that have not had access, whether it be for education, but certainly lack of access, either healthcare or information technology. No, I certainly appreciate those viewpoints in terms of what the millennials and the younger generation is doing, and how they are appreciating what is around them. That's got to be a real relevant point for you in terms of hiring.
Yes.
What's the age group by and large? A little bit general question, but by and large, what is the age group that Telect is looking to hire?
Well, it's general for us. We still have an older demographic.
Right.
Yes, we still do. It's in there, and not to be critical of our demographic or others or even my age group, but my age group is beginning to think more about retiring than they are about continue learning. So I want them to continue to learn. I have a real strong philosophy in the business. I want to retain, recruit, and release. I want to retain people and train them, recruit the best that we need, and then release the ones that can be successful someplace else if it's not
or ready
working.
For the next stage.
Another stage.
So let's talk about that a little bit in terms of succession planning, because I know that is an issue that is close to your heart.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you. It's been one of my kids, my son Spencer, decided that he wanted to come into the business early on, like 16, 17 years old. So he interned with us and went to TCU with economics, but he interned and then started with us about 4 years ago. And about coming up on 2 years this July, with John Townsend and Spencer and I were together, and he said, Spencer's wanting more. He's wanting to get to this. This is where the product strategy needs to go. Well, that was me.
Yeah.
That was me the same time.
And that's got to be fascinating for you looking and seeing that in your own son.
Yeah, you do. And you're going, he goes, "I think we should go down this path, and this is where it is." And what I needed to do, which is hard, because as you get older, your value is in what you've done with your hands, not always with your mind and your coaching. And I needed to begin to release and let that happen. And in doing so, I didn't just release that just for him. I started to release it for others in the company. And instead of, trying, this is what I've touched and done. And that to me has been fascinating, because so many people want to control by hanging on to something, but if you don't open up your hands, no one's going to be able to give you something else.
That's true.
And so that one's been very cool for me to watch.
Where do you see yourself? You've accomplished a lot, many years. You're looking back at 30 years and what you've accomplished at Telect and in many, many other areas, and coaching and mentoring and your family. Obviously, family is extremely important. Where do you see yourself in the next 5-10 years?
Well, this is my, I would tell you right now, this is probably my growing year, my big growth year. And it's growth in a way that I really feel like up through 2016, I live to work. And so this year I'm really trying to get into working to live.
Work to live.
And it's been a hard change. I've carved out a day a week for me, which no one else can get in. That's on a Wednesday. They really can't get in unless I choose to let that in.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. So you intentionally had to carve out a period of time to make this work for you.
It's blocked out from 6 in the morning to 6 at night, and it says client. If you called me up and it says, can you meet me on Wednesday? I'd say, no, I've got a meeting with my client.
Right.
So it's just, and what I have to do is, because I'm not really good at if I don't block something out. If you and I had an appointment,
right,
I would tell somebody, no, I can't because I've got an appointment with Ryan.
Right.
That makes sense, but not with me. So now I've done it. Well, it's been fascinating because in that, it's given me margin. It's given me the ability to move an appointment from a Friday maybe to today. It's giving me more time to get into things and create and learn. And so I'm kind of in that process. I'm an elder at our church, Valley Real Life Church in Spokane Valley, and I've just joined that in November. And so there's some fascination with of that for me, is to begin to speak into men and women in doing just through some of the ministries that are going on out there. So that's been kind of a fun thing.
I absolutely commend you, because I don't think it matters what industry our listeners would be thinking about for themselves, that you really do, in this ever-changing world, this fast-paced world, social media, technology, constantly being inundated, you really do need to carve out time. And I think you've very intentionally done that, realized it, but then functionally, practically have done it. I know myself, I'm feeling very convicted, because I'm in that spot, I think, in my life. I need to be doing that as well. But I don't think everybody takes the time to do it.
No, and you have to set a boundary that you can't break. And so boundaries,
it's tough to do.
It's really important to do it. If I look at my time, if I look at my time as $1 per hour when I'm awake, I have to think about it. Is that $1 per hour that I'm giving to my kids or my wife as or more important than the $1 an hour that I'm giving to my business, or that? It's been powerful for me to have to walk through.
Well, I'll tell you what, Wayne, this conversation has been very enlightening for me and beneficial, and so I hope for our listeners it has been as well. And thank you for joining us in the studio. I hope you'd come back and do this again. Let's just keep going on the same topics and see where we get to.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you so much,
it.
Ryan.
Thank
appreciate
you so
that.
much.
You bet. Thanks.
Thank you. Actually.
Business Talks is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well Dressed Walrus. Business Talks wishes you good business and a good day.
If you're like many shoppers, you love to find a deal online. Or you shop online because it's so convenient. And you probably know thieves love to go online too, to try to steal shoppers' credit card information. When you're shopping online, you can start protecting your credit card information by investigating the website you're shopping on. Make sure the online retailer lists a real phone number and a physical address. Read the site's privacy policy and search for reviews and ratings of the retailer. You can read more about safe shopping online at STCU's financial education blog. Go to stcumoney.org.
Last year alone, Avista customers saved over 53 million kilowatt hours of energy. How? By caulking their windows, programming their thermostats, replacing their incandescent light bulbs with LEDs. Simple things, really. But the energy they saved was enough to power more than 4,000 homes for an entire year. Way to save, everyone. Way to save. Find your way to save at avistautilities.com.